I was with a friend who went to the hospital one day. He asked me to go with him. His grandmother was dying. I was just standing behind him, just sort of holding him up there. Come on, man, just do it. And she said, baby, I'm not gonna make it. I'm finna go home. But I called you down here because I want to ask you something. She said, do you know your great-grandfather's name? He said, no, my dear, I don't. She said, you know why? She said, because he didn't leave you nothing. She said, when I die, I want you to go away from him. And I want you to live your life so that your children's grandchildren will know your name. And the only way for them to know who you are is you got to leave them something. That day, he didn't get the message, but I heard it though. I heard it. And when I heard that, it changed me.
Most people, half of what they thought today is the same things they thought yesterday. About themselves, about their life, about their business. That's why most people's lives don't change very much. But if you wake up and you start realizing, I'm living in a home, an emotional home I don't want, you can change it. See, because everybody's got it. If you got $1 billion, check this out. If you had $1 billion, but the habitual emotions you go back to are frustrated, pissed off, then your life is called frustrated and pissed off. It doesn't matter how much money you have. Write this down, please. The quality of my life is the quality of my habitual emotions. The quality of my entire life is nothing but the quality of my habitual emotions. Whatever habits of emotion, wherever my emotional home is, I will find a way to get back there. And until I change that, I'm gonna have a problem. How many of you see people in some part of the world, in my country, for example, you'll see this in the middle of America where there's certain places that have cyclones all the time. Or maybe down in New Orleans or places where every few years you get a huge storm that wipes out everybody right on the coast there. But then 2 years later, it happens again. They rebuild, it happens again. How many have ever thought to yourself, why don't these people move? Why don't they move, guys? Because it's what they're conditioned. They call that home. I don't want to leave my home, it's what I know. It's easy to see when it's somebody else and it's physical. It's harder to see when it's yourself and it's emotional, because we have an emotional home. Some of you grew up in a really tough environment. I did too. Pretty brutal environment. Very painful environment. Part of I am who I am is because I didn't want to suffer and I had to find answers. And because I suffered so much, I don't want you to ever suffer if I can do anything about it. I can't control it, but I can help massively. But it's only because I suffered so much I don't want anybody else to. But think about it. Most people suffer even when they're successful. Listen, if you're successful and you're not fulfilled, that's the ultimate failure. If you got people that love you and you're not feeling joyous and alive, something's wrong. And you know what it is? You got an old home you're used to. Maybe the home you're used to is not a very happy home. It's a home of worry, a home of frustration, a home of anger, a home of feeling everything's unjust. And so you find a way to get back home using whatever the environment you can use. How many of you know somebody who's always pissed off about something? How many of you know somebody who is always worried? How many of you know someone who's not really funny, but they think they are? And they crack themselves up telling stupid jokes. How many know someone like this who cracks themselves up and they laugh so much that even though it's not funny, you find yourself laughing too? These people have different emotional homes. Some people's home is anger. They'll always find something to be angry about.
Do something different the next 90 days than you did the last 90 days, like picking up the books to read. Do something different, like the new health disciplines, relationship with your family, whatever it is, doesn't matter how small it is. If you'll start doing different things with the same circumstances, since we cannot change the circumstances, but we can change ourselves. We can change what we do. Then he gave me another secret to success when he said, what you have at the moment, Mr. Rohn, you've attracted by the person you've become. What you have at the moment, you've attracted by the person you've become. Few little simple principles here. Once you understand these, you start to explain so much. Now, sometimes it's a little tough to take, blaming yourself instead of the marketplace, taking responsibility instead of putting it off on someone else. That transition sometimes is a challenging mission. And this one was a little tough for me. He said, Mr. Rohn, you've got pennies in your pocket, you've got nothing in the bank, creditors are calling, you're behind on your promises. He says, here's how that occurs. You've attracted, up until now, you've attracted the things to you because of the person you've become. Now I said, well, how can I change all that? He said, very simple. If you will change, everything will change. You don't have to change what's outside. All you've got to change is what's inside. To have more, you simply have to become more. And then he said, don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems. Wish for more skills. Start working on yourself, making these personal changes. And he said, it'll all change for you. Shoaff said, here's the secret, Mr. Rohn. Learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. Once I got that, it turned my life around. Learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job. He said, if you work hard on your job, you'll make a living. If you work hard on yourself, you can make a fortune. If you would have known me at age 25, you would have said, Jim Rohn's a hard worker. If you'd have known me, you'd have said that. I'm the guy, I don't mind coming a little bit early, staying a little bit late, I don't mind that. You'd have said, well, Jim Rohn's a hard worker. You say, well, how come he's got pennies in his pocket, nothing in the bank, and behind on his promises? Well, I was a hard worker, but I was working hard on my job, not on myself. I'm telling you, if you'll learn that simple little principle and start the process today, latest tomorrow, I'll give you tonight to think about.
The easiest thing I've done was to get out from under the labels and to live the life that I live. The most difficult thing I've ever done was to believe that I can do it. The difference is that when you don't know what's impacting you, and it's something that's holding you down and you're not aware of it. There are things that when you, in my situation, you live in a dominant culture that is designed to destroy your sense of self and your belief in yourself, and you have to learn ways in which you can begin to connect with this power that you have within yourself to handle where you are. The key is to be constantly in a perpetual process of discovering the truth of who you are and fighting constantly to look for ways in which you can escape the inner conversation. Between ages 0 and 5, we determine what's available to us and what's not available to us. And so that was a defining moment. I knew there are certain things I could not do, certain places I could not go. They used to have signs on Miami Beach that said, Jews, dogs, and coloreds not allowed. And so now you have to operate within the constraints of the dominant society and the things that they've created for you. And it's a challenge to see yourself beyond that and to work to get outside of that, even after those laws have changed, because that has become so much a part of you. You unconsciously operate within the parameters of what has been put in place. Like you're driving on the expressway, the 405, and you'll get off on an exit that You weren't going in that direction, but you unconsciously did it because you've done it so many times that many people, because they're not making a conscious, deliberate, determined effort to think outside of what life has thrown at them, they end up doing the same thing over and over and over again. Einstein said that thinking that has brought me this far has created some problems that this thinking can't solve. And so through relationships, through reading, through studies, through goals and dreams beyond your comfort zone, it allows you to begin to live out of your imagination as opposed to out of your history. Disney said, the imagination is a preview of what's to come.
Think about your life along 6 dimensions. So the goal is this: you're going to take care of yourself. You're going to have a life in 3 years that justifies its suffering. That's the goal. So you can invent the damn life, but you have to think what you would be satisfied with, so you wouldn't be all bitter and resentful. It's like, okay, what do you want from your family? What do you want from your friends? How are you going to educate yourself? What do you want for your career? How are you going to use your time outside of work? How are you going to handle drugs and alcohol and other temptations like that? How are you going to keep yourself mentally and physically healthy? And these are open questions, like you get to answer them. The idea is you can have whatever you want, but you have to figure out what it is. It has to be realistic, and you have to figure out what it is. It's okay, so now develop a vision. What's your life going to be like in 3 to 5 years? So you write it down. Your bad habits and your resentment and your bitterness and all of that, your procrastination gets completely out of hand, and you auger down, and you're in your own personal version of hell in 3 to 5 years. What does that look like? Well, everyone knows that. It's like everyone can look into the future and think, well, if I keep going on this dark path, this is where I'll end up. Well, then you've got little hell outlined for yourself to run away from, and you got a little heaven outlined for yourself to run towards, and then you're motivated. Because sometimes, you're just hopeful. I would like a good thing to happen. It's like, yeah, but I'd like to drink half a bottle of whiskey tonight too. It's like, so which is it going to be? Well, just being hopeful about the future might not be enough, but then you think, oh, I see. Like, there's that little hell thing that I outlined that's waiting for me. And maybe I'm afraid of taking the next step forward because it's demanding and challenging. Like, yeah, I'm afraid of that, but I'm way more afraid of where I might end up if I don't get my act together. And people should be. That's why there are conceptions of hell in so many religions. It's like, hell's a real place. Whether it's eternal, that's a whole different question. Whether it's waiting for you in the afterlife, that's a whole different question. But if you've never met anyone in hell, you haven't lived very long. You haven't had your eyes open.